Back when I worked at Old Navy, I was on the processing team that typically worked the closing and night shift. That way we could make sure all of the shelves are neatly stocked up when the store opened in the morning. This was an amazing job and really wasn't that difficult. The store I worked at had all the pallets delivered before we even arrived. So we would just break down the boxes, sort and fold the clothes that had just been dropped off, and then made sure to fill out the shelves and change out whatever sales and markdowns that we were doing. And on the easier days, we even got to listen to our music. As long as it wasn't disruptive. Everyone I worked with was pretty cool too. So all in all, I love that job. But that's also where I had one of the craziest experiences I'll probably ever have. You see, I was working one evening and it was right before closing, so we still had a few people shopping in the store. I was spending a lot of my time in the back room doing an inventory and getting the carts filled with products that needed to hit the shelves. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary at first, but that took a turn really quickly. The store that I was working at happened to be across from a relatively small jewelry store, and unbeknownst to me and the people in the Old Navy, the store had just been robbed. It was probably around 8:30 at night when I heard the sound of a woman screaming from the front of the store, which of course caused me to drop what I was working on and begin to rush out of the storeroom. I was stopped, however, by a man who had been fleeing from the robbery and was clearly carrying a firearm. Everything happened so fast, I couldn't tell if it was a handgun or some sort of mini-automatic SMG of sorts. As soon as I saw the weapon in their hand, I froze. Luckily for me, the man just pushed me to the side as he continued to run through the back room. I ran out into the front of the store where everyone had already been in the process of evacuating, and once we were all out, I closed the front door and locked it, and we all waited patiently for the police to arrive. The response time of the officers was impressive, but by the time they arrived and made their way through the store, the man who had terrorized us was nowhere to be found. After speaking to one of the officers, it turned out that he robbed the jewelry store alone and in the process, actually shot one of the employees. It was at that moment I realized how lucky I was that when I came face to face with the gunman, I didn't meet the same fate. It took about an hour and a half for the police to fully check the store to a point where they were comfortably saying that the man had left the premises presumably through the back door. By that time, the store was ready to be closed up and the entire processing team was given the night off after the incident. Since none of us really wanted to be there at that moment, we finished cleaning the store really quick and then locked up before all of us headed home. Over the next couple of days, we had a few follow-up visits from the police who wanted to see our security footage, but other than that, there had been no sign of the man responsible, at least not for a couple of months. It was around the middle of June when we noticed that our AC unit wasn't functioning as well as it used to, and after making a few calls, we had an HVAC contractor come and take a look at it, and it wasn't long before she found the problem. We notified the police of what she found right away, and they were at the store in no time, along with paramedics. It turned out that the robber never made it out of the store. He must have found a way to squeeze into the air ducts and try to hide out. However, he must have tried to go forward at one point while inside and ended up going into a duct that led straight down. Now, this dugal wasn't wide enough for him to turn his body, and he was in a position where he couldn't wedge himself back out of the duct the way that he came in. It's unclear how long it took, but the man ended up being stuck upside down in the duct, which likely caused him agonizing pain and discomfort until he ultimately passed away. The police recovered the body along with nearly $25,000 worth of jewelry in his pockets. One of the scariest moments of my life came just a few months before my 17th birthday. I was 16 years old and had just gotten my driver's license at the beginning of that summer, which meant that when I wasn't working my part-time job at McDonald's, I was usually driving around with my friends and family. As the summer came to an end, my mom asked a favor of me, which I happily accepted. She had asked me if I would take my younger sister to the local strip mall to get some clothes and supplies for the upcoming school year, and as I said, this wasn't an issue at all. I told my sister Mary that I would take her to get what she needed, and if she was good in the store, we could grab some ice cream afterward from my favorite stand. So when the time came, she was more than excited. We left our house around 4:30 in the afternoon, and the mall was only about a 25 miles drive, so we were there in no time, and to our surprise, finding a parking spot was quite easy as the lot was rather empty. Mary and I got out of my car and we started our trip by heading to the Target that was across the parking lot from the mall and picked up a couple notebooks and all of the required writing supplies for her. It was strange though, as we made our way through the store I couldn't help but feel like someone had been following us. This caused me to periodically look over my shoulder as me and my younger sister made our way up and down the aisle, and in my opinion I didn't see anything that would be considered out of the ordinary. There were a few other shoppers in the store, but other than that I didn't notice anything suspicious. I tried my best to remain calm and brush the strange feeling away so that I didn't concern Mary, but I sure was happy when we finished up in Target. We then made our way over to the Kohl's that was located in the strip mall to look for some new clothes for Mary. I told her that she could get anything that she wanted, so right away we began looking at some light-up shoes and other clothes that I too would have loved when I was a child. Honestly, back to school. Shopping with her that day would have been so much fun had I not continued to get that feeling. It hit me like a freight train, but as Mary tried on some clothes in the changing room, I again couldn't help but feel as if someone had been stalking me. This time I decided to call my mom and let her know that I was feeling a bit odd and wondered if I could head home with Mary after this. My mom understood the concern, but instead of telling me to cut the shopping trip short, she decided to come to the mall and finish up herself. She asked me to wait there and she would be there soon. I reluctantly agreed, but knowing her schedule, this was probably the only time that we would have been able to get Mary clothes and such, so it was the best option at the time, or so we thought. After finishing up in Kohl's, Mary still needed a few things and wanted to run by the Gap outlet store that was in the same plaza, so I texted my mom and told her to meet us there instead, and I cautiously walked my sister over to Gap with my head on a swivel the entire way. There was still no sign of anyone though the fact that it had begun to get dark out didn't make things any less stressful. The two of us went into Gap and began looking at some sweatshirts and jackets that were in a pretty good sale, and about 5 minutes after getting into the store, my mom texted me to let me know that she was pulling into the parking lot. I let Mary know that our mom was there, and she was so excited that she wanted to go outside and meet her. So I grabbed her hand and we made our way out of the store quickly. And as I made my way through the automated sliding doors, I was knocked to the ground. 3 men had swarmed the entrance of the store and began hitting me with a hail of fists and kicks as I dropped to the floor. That was when I heard Mary scream. I looked up and saw her in the arms of one of my attackers, who was now dragging my little sister away from me through the parking lot. She began to cry and flail about, but there was nothing I could do. As I was still being pummeled by 2 of the men, I thought I had lost her. That was when I heard 2 voices yelling, one of which I knew as my mother, who must have seen what was happening and was rushing to help. The other I didn't recognize. To my surprise, another man who had been shopping inside Gap saw what happened and ran out to assist us. He was followed by 3 employees who had been working at the time, and when the men saw all of the people coming to assist, they quickly gave up on their attack and ran off. The man who had taken my sister had dropped her. When it became too hard for him to get into the vehicle, she ran straight to my mother, who then ran to me, and law enforcement was on site within minutes. The 3 men who came after us that day were never apprehended or charged, at least not to our knowledge. When I was in my 20s, I was living in New York, about 40 minutes away from New York City. This was great because at the time I had actually been working in the city and would spend a lot of my time there, and the train ride to commute home really wasn't bad at all. All in all, I loved the city. But I would say that before I left, it seemed like every day it was getting more and more dangerous just to be walking around. And believe me when I tell you that no one is safe from it. It was the middle of April, and I'd just gotten off work and had to run some errands before heading home. So I found myself walking around the city, just hitting up a few stores that were only a block or 2 from the office, and after a long day at work, I figured that it wouldn't hurt to grab a small bite to eat and a beer before heading home. It was Friday, after all, so I did just that. I went into one of the bars that I enjoyed eating at every now and then, and the sign referred to the bar as a tavern. which I thought was awesome, and I ordered some mozzarella sticks, fries, and a drink. By the time I finished my meal, it was around 7:30 at night, and I figured I should probably head back home before things got too crazy. If you know New York City, you'll know that on the weekends it can get super packed with people. On my way to the subway that would bring me to the train transfer station, though I ended up having to use the bathroom. I looked around and saw a small outlet store and decided to run in and ask if they had a restroom. I was surprised to see the store was practically empty. There seemed to be a single employee working, and they were busy putting clothes away when they saw me. They must have known I needed to use the bathroom by the expression on my face, because he just gestured toward a door in the back, which I presumed was the restroom. I was right, and I walked in and I noticed a single stall and a urinal. I ran over to the urinal and began to relieve myself when out of nowhere I heard the door of the stall throw itself open, and before I could even zip my pants up, I could feel a gun being pressed into my back. The man told me not to move and that this would be quick, and then began running his hands through my pockets. He grabbed my wallet, my personal cell phone, and my work cell phone. It was at that moment that I truly began to freak out, and the man must not have liked me fidgeting around, because out of nowhere a loud popping noise went off and all I could hear was a ringing in my ear. I had been shot. I dropped to my knees. I hadn't noticed the pain yet, but I could feel the heat coming out of the wound in my back. I attempted to pivot my body in order to face my attacker, but at that moment I heard the sound of 2 more gunshots. My vision began to fade and soon everything was black. I remember waking up to the employee putting pressure on my wound and panicking, telling me that help was coming. I managed to hold on until the paramedics arrived on the scene, and thankfully I walked away from the incident with only a bit of physical therapy required. Following my recovery, the police pulled the footage of the man exiting the store quickly after shooting me. It's believed the only reason he didn't get the employee on his way out was that he was hiding behind the shelf stocking clothes. The man who mugged me was arrested 2 months later following another robbery that he attempted in the same area. I never saw any of the stuff that he took from me again, though, but I suppose it could have been much worse.